So today, I'd like to talk about the kind of barriers that hold people back from what they want to do. And I say people, and I really mean myself involved, just because I think I've probably used most of the excuses that I'm going to talk about. So the first one is age, and a lot of people feel like they're too old to do what they want to do. And I'd like to mention Colonel Sanders, who, after decades of failure, quote unquote, he decided to license his recipe for chicken, which people seem to like, and that became Kentucky Fried Chicken. And just as I even say it, I feel like ordering some now. But the point of that is that he was 65 at the time, and there are many other people who've crossed that barrier as well. In fact, there's many people who have crossed all the barriers I'm going to mention, but I'll just mention one as I go along. So the flip side of the age thing is that some people feel they're too young to make any kind of impact on the world, that nobody's going to want to listen to them. So there's a girl, well, she's now a woman, who you just have to say her first name and everybody knows who she is, and that's Malala. And she became an activist for girls' education at the age of 15, and as we know, she was shot for her beliefs. But a couple of years later, she was back in there and she won a Nobel Peace Prize at the age of 17. Another barrier that people, that's in people's minds is race. And I don't know if you know of a country singer named Charlie Pride, but he was a black guy who had huge success on the country charts and the pop charts in the 70s, and I think he's still going. So the flip side of that is David Rodigan, who is a white guy from Oxford, and he became like a highly respected reggae DJ, and not just respected in England, but all over the world, including Jamaica, where he went to compete with other DJs in competitions, and he actually won some of them as well. So there you have it. Another sensitive one that I don't want to come across like I'm preaching to people who are disabled, but I feel that I need to mention this as a barrier that can keep people back. And one example of someone who overcame extreme disability is a guy named Sean Stevenson, who you might not have heard of, but he was a motivational coach and author who was born with some sort of brittle bone condition, and the doctors only gave him 24 hours to live when he was born. But he died last year at the age of 40, and he was in a wheelchair, never grew taller than 3 feet, but he traveled the world with his message, and he was never like, poor me, look at me, I'm doing everything I can in spite of these terrible disabilities. He was just really down to earth, really humorous, and he just got on with it, basically, which is what a lot of us find hard to do, whether we have disabilities or not. Another barrier that can keep people back is that they feel they don't have the right connections, or, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, so how am I going to get ahead? And there's a woman who, she's another one who we know just by her first name, and she grew up in a rural town in Mississippi. She managed to make her way to university in Tennessee and worked on local radio and TV. And her ambition was to be a news anchorwoman, but for various reasons that didn't work out for her, and she was demoted to the daily talk show, and that developed into the Oprah Winfrey Show. And, well, need I say more? Connected to having not the right connections is lack of money, or feeling that you need some sort of patron to help you. The high-end fashion designer Ralph Lauren grew up in a family where he actually had to wear his brother's hand-me-downs, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, look at him now. Um, Another one is not enough time. Um, and I know that people have all different things going on in their life where they just feel like they just can't make enough time for what they need to do. But there used to be a joke going around that Beyonce has the same 24 hours as the rest of us. And also, to something quite useful that a coach told me was, don't just make a to-do list, but make a not to-do list. And if you make a list of all the things that you currently do that you don't need to do right now, you could free up a lot of time. Another one is not having enough education. Obviously, there are certain things that you need to have a certain amount of education, like being a doctor, for example. But for the vast majority of us, there are things that we can pass on to others without having a degree, without having a huge amount of formal education. I'm not advocating that kids now turn to their parents and say, "Oh, Carol Jack said that I don't need to have an education." I'm just saying that, you know, if you, for some reason, didn't have that full education, there are other people who have made their way in the world, um, and coming from seemingly a low level. And I'm actually in a group at the moment, which its whole purpose is to help people who, well, we're all at different levels of education, but is to help people who want to extract their current knowledge and experience and pass it on to others. And at last count, there were about 4,000 niches in that group. One of my favorites is teaching people how to bond with your teenage children through art, which I think is a really fantastic niche. So I wanted to just end off with a story that Tony Robbins likes to tell. And he says that in one of his books, well, his thing is that anything is possible. But in this book, he qualified it by saying that if you're 5'2", the chances of you winning a basketball slam dunk competition is probably quite slim. However, since then, Tony Robbins has said that a couple years after he wrote that, there was a guy who was 5'7", and his name was Spud Webb, and he won a slam dunk competition. So even Tony Robbins had to kind of pull back a little bit from what he said. And so, yeah, food for thought for today. And what I would like is, I mean, I've just mentioned one person in each category, and maybe there's some other barriers that you know about or you yourself have come across. And yeah, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. See you next time.